What's up, YouTube? I'm back, awkwardly standing for another introduction to my video. I'm Justin, but it says that in my name. Anyway, I haven't made a video in a really long time, and I'm kind of sorry for that, kind of not. I moved, so now that I'm here, I was like, hey, I can make more videos. I can make videos about the things that I want to do, and the things that I am currently doing. And so, here's one of those. So, what I have in store for this video is that right there. Not the speaker, the TV on top of the speaker. This is an old cathode ray tube television, and I'm gonna make it into a type of an oscilloscope. So basically, this is a project from a long time ago, about 2 years ago. I bought this thing, opened it up, detached the deflection coils, and then added some jacks to them, and then tried to pump audio into it, and I ran into a few problems. So problem number one, the dot in the center was not in the center. I don't know which side it was offset to, or if it was up or down, but I know it was offset. So to me, that signifies that there's some DC in there, which is offsetting that dot. We don't want that to happen, so I think that a good fix for that would probably be a capacitor. A couple of large capacitors, so that all my audio can get through and none of that nasty direct current bullshit. We love AC here. The second problem that I ran into with this thing was that the image was super tiny, which meant that I had to turn up my amplifier like all the way, and then I couldn't drive my speakers with it because it was all the way turned up and my speakers would have exploded. So I had the speakers turned off, and then it was about half size. And so this thing requires a lot of power to get that electron moving. And so that leads me to the third problem, which was that the deflection coils are not rated evenly, which means that the image not only is incredibly hard to display because of the power consumption, but also it's not scaled correctly. The y-axis is like 1/10 the size of the x-axis, so it takes like 10 times the amount of voltage for one channel as opposed to the other. So these were all issues that I ran into when doing this. Another issue that I ran into when doing this is the audio that I was putting in here to check whether or not it was working was the audio of a circle. And that audio has already had the right side phase shifted. Now, I want this thing to be able to tell me about monocompatibility of music and things like that too, as opposed to just making cool pictures. So I want this thing to have a built-in phase shift for one of the channels. I think I'll do the right channel. So I need to make a 90-degree phase shift device, which I'm guessing is just going to be some capacitors. And I'll make some all-pass filters. Then I need to make a scaling amplifier for the right channel, or whichever one, the Y channel. It might be the X channel that's skewed. I think it's the Y. But I'll figure that out once I retest this. Anyway, I need to make a scaling amplifier for that so that I can get a circle to look like a circle, and then I need to make a kind of like a multiplying amplifier for the entire image to multiply to the size of the screen. I have the wonderful addition of this thing right here has a battery compartment, which seems like the perfect spot to fit some potentiometers, some jacks, a whole circuit board, and some wires to get it all wired together. So, I think that this is a very doable project, and at the end it'll be a very cool little guy sitting over there doing his thing, making some cool blue pictures. Yeah. Okay, so I think a great thing to tackle first here would be the all-pass filters, because I don't really know a whole lot about that, and I think that that's what's probably going to challenge me the most with this. So why don't we start with some research on all-pass filters. This is a wonderful book. I love this book. Okay, so the research has been done, lots of equations later, and I've come up with some values that I think are going to be just fine for this circuit. They're not very normal resistor values, but I looked at the resistors I had and came up with the closest that I could get. And I don't really mind using extra resistors, so I have some pretty normal capacitor values in there. Both of them are 0.01 microfarad, and then all of these just kind of add up to my resistor values. I think this is R1 here was 3K, R2 was 51K or around there, R3 was 64K or around there, so that'll get me, I think, 64.5K, and then this will get me 169K for the 168K, so I think that'll be pretty good. Doesn't really matter, all it's going to do is shift my center frequency, and the center frequency obviously doesn't matter in an all-pass circuit. It won't affect the phase shift at all, which is really the thing that I'm most worried about. So this should give me a 90 degrees phase shift with a gain of 0.5, which can easily be fixed with an amplifier with a gain of 2. So that should be good. Okay, so right now I'm at a bit of a thinking point, because I have some op-amps here that I think are going to work well for this, and I'm thinking about how to make this simple yet still work in the way that I want it to. So what I have here, this is an LM741. It's a single op amp, and I was going to use this for the all-pass filter. That one I'm not so worried about because the gain on that one doesn't really matter. Now the amplifiers that I'm using for actually amplifying, I'm going to use TL072 CP. It's a dual op amp, and I was planning on using one of the op amps for the scaling of the x-axis. That's right, I've been editing the video. I know which axis it is. So I was planning on using one of the op amps in here for the scaling of the x-axis, and then the other op amp for the scaling of both together. But now that I'm thinking about that, that doesn't make sense because I'm going to need a dual op amp for 2 channels. Okay, so here I am solving my problem as I'm making this video. Basically the problem was I'm looking at the data sheet for this op amp, and I'm thinking about how much voltage it's going to take to power that. So I have a maximum power supply rating on this of 42 volts, but no, I have a maximum voltage rating on this guy of 36 volts, which means 36 volts peak to peak. I don't really know what that is in RMS, but I have a maximum headroom of 36 volts peak to peak. That doesn't quite sit right with me because I feel like that, let's just think, 10 to 3 amps. I don't know. That might work. I don't know. Anyway, that problem's not really a big deal anymore. Now I feel like I'm gonna have to use transistors to do the main amplification because the headroom isn't as much of an issue if you can just chain transistors. And I have a whole lot more transistors than I do op amps. In fact, these are the only 2 non-discrete op amps I have. Literally the rest of my op amps look like this. So, yeah, transistors it is. Now I'm thinking, right, because how many amps is that? 36 maximum peak to peak, so maximum of 18, so 10 ohms. So in either day a maximum 18. That would mean coil volts. So 1.8 or 18 amps. That's a lot. That's a lot of current. Is that a lot of current? Let's look it up. I don't know how much current can kill you. yeah. So 18 amps is a lot of amps. And I don't want that sitting above my speaker. So that's a lot. That's too much. I think that'll be too much. I'm thinking if I send 18 amps through a 1 ohm tiny piece of coiled up wire, that's probably gonna, if not explode, just like turn red hot and fall apart. And I don't want that. So I think that I might be able to get away with a lot less power going through it, so I might be able to get away with a lot less amplification, which will be cool. So here's what I'm thinking now is that amount of current is not, it won't work. I don't think so, at least. I might be wrong because the coils are driving an electron, so there might be another load there that I'm not privy to, but I'm pretty sure that the load is just the coil, and then it's using something magnetic to float that electron around. I don't know though. So honestly, this is kind of turning into shots in the dark, and I don't like that, especially when I'm dealing with that thing, because that's high voltage, and I don't really want to mess with high voltage that much. I mean, that tube can kill me easily. The coils can probably easily kill me, and just genuinely, I don't want to have to power this thing up and run a bunch of tests on it and see, with a exposed breadboard and me grabbing potentiometers and stuff and being like, here we go, let's turn it up until it looks right. Oh, okay, now I'm gonna probe this and see what resistance value that is. Okay, cool. And I mean, that's one way to do it for sure, but that way sucks, and I think it's my only option right now, because I can't quite math my way out of this because there's too much stuff that I don't know. You know whose fault that is? Anyway, I'm gonna do what I always do. I'm gonna brute force my way through it. It's gonna be messy, and it might not work. So I hope it works. There's a better chance that it's gonna work if I just brute force my way through it than if I do a bunch of math and then rely on the math, because God knows I'm bad at math and I make errors all the time. I made an error when I was making one of the coefficients negative, and then the resistance values were negative, and I was like, how do I get negative resistors? And then I was like, oh wait, I did something wrong. I just misplaced a negative sign because I'm dumb. Anyway, relying on math, except for this, because I think this is solid. I think that my all-pass filter is probably solid, but relying on math that I don't quite know for that thing, for a load that I don't quite know, dishing out a possible 18 amps, it's a lot of current, and it's probably gonna explode it, so I don't want to do that. So, here's the plan for the future. I think what I'm gonna do next is build the all-pass filter and test it to make sure that it's shifting 90 degrees evenly across the spectrum. Then I'm going to take that guy back apart and run some tests on it. I would love to output +4 dBu, because then I could just set the interface outputs to line, and that would always be the same for that, for any line level device. So +4 dBu would be ideal. So order of operations, build that thing, test that thing, test that thing. After that thing's tested, whatever the results reveal, I'll design some amplifier circuits based off of that, and then hook up some input and output jacks, put it all on some perf board because I'm disgusting, and do some drilling and modification to the TV, and that'll be good. So that's what's in store.